Did you find the moose?
No, he's proving to be very elusive.
Do you need to be reminded of what happens to those that fail?
No, my lord.
Do you even realize what will happen if he finds the ultimate commander first?
I mean, what would happen?
The ancient Mayans tried to predict it. They called it Holak Bakal. What a fool he was, trying to contain all that power in a singular card. Find him.
What's up, Planeswalkers? How you doing? MH3 is loose. And we have commanders to cover. Today we're talking about a bit of a special case. You see, this card is so powerful that I could have just dropped the box of bulk rares and called it a day. We're talking about Nadu, Winged Wisdom, a SIMIC and 1 colorless 3/4 that says creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it on the battlefield, otherwise put it into your hand. This ability only triggers twice each turn. Two things to note here. First, the land enters untapped, and it's basically a lord effect, so while it only says twice a turn, it doesn't really matter if you have enough creatures. So I had quite the problem making a list for this card because, like most SIMIC commanders, it's just too easy to build, and this card is no exception. So believe it or not, just to spice the deck up, I tried to make a landfall on a budget, which felt like trying to explain combat to a combo player. Impossible. What we ended up with was a deck that is primarily landfall with a few other strategies, as I wanted to show off a little bit of everything with this deck list while still making it playable. So is this the most competitive list out there? No, not a chance. But when your commander is this strong, it's definitely going to beat up any battlecruiser decks you come across. So first things first, let's talk about the landfall cards that we could afford. Bristly Bill, Spine Sower, does everything our commander wants, gives us a way to target our creatures while benefiting us if we reveal a land from the top of our library, as it could create a chain effect. Since this card is only 2 mana, it is the perfect early game play, and if no one has removal, we will quickly roll things out of proportion. It is really expensive, but I find cards like this usually find a home in future decks, so I wouldn't feel guilty if you pick this card up. Lotus Cobra is another prime example of a card that always holds value. This landfall card, while not giving us a way to target creatures, will generate us so much mana that we'll easily be able to play most of the cards out of our hand. And again, our commander is going to fill our hand up a lot, so we are going to be mana hungry. Spring Heart Nantuk is a combo piece in our deck, as we can get tokens out of it when lands ETB. Meaning with a free way to target creatures, we can draw our deck. Now there's more to it than that, but we'll get into that later. Corso of Crucifix might not have landfall printed on the card, but it does have a landfall ability, which is not a strong one, as 1 life isn't much, but it's important as one of our combo pieces costs us life. The other parts of the card work well with our commander, since we want to know the top card of our library, that way we know what we're hitting off of the trigger. Grazing Gladeheart will give us 2 life when a land ETBs, along with Unctus, and I'll talk about that in its own section. We can start comboing off as long as we have a way to make tokens on landfall. Scoot Swarm, like the Spring Heart card, is a combo piece that works to make us a bunch of tokens on landfall that, along with a free way to target creatures, will let us draw our deck and win in the Labman style. It is important to note that Scoot Swarm, unlike the other token generators, has the biggest potential to not miss since it can make so many tokens. Tatyova, Steward of Tides, landfall ability makes us creatures by turning our lands into those creatures. What's notable about this card is once we've turned a land into a creature, we can target the same land again and trigger our commander. It's not really triggering our commander since the text from our commander goes to the other creatures, but I'm going to refer to it like that for the rest of the deck. Tireless Provisioner won't combo off or anything, but it will give us some survivability and treasure ramp, and again, we will be very mana hungry with the amount of cards we'll be drawing. Speaking of card draw, we're also playing Tireless Tracker, and this card has turned into quite the budget-friendly card over the years. Embodiment of Insight is going to work like the previous Tatyova card we talked about, making us land creatures on ETB that we can retarget for additional triggers. Spore Mound is yet another combo piece for the deck. It works like Scoot Swarm, giving us a chance to draw our deck. The good news is that by playing this many cards that can combo off means the consistency of our deck will be very competitive. Tatyova Benthic Druid is just a classic SIMIC card that will let us draw a card when a land ETBs, just a very standard good landfall card that is dirt cheap. Rampaging Bailoff has combo potential, but also can serve as a way to beat the players down if we whiff on lands. Avenger of Zendikar is another such card, but now with our commander and all the bodies that this card can make, it can serve another purpose. Roaring Earth is a landfall card that gives us another way to target our creatures. In worst case, it's just going to make us a swole board to beat players down with. Retreat to Coralheim and Retreat to Kazandu share a similar function to Roaring Earth, but they also have another option which can be useful if we find ourselves with no creatures after a board wipe. Sendikar's Royal is yet another way to make creature tokens on landfall. What's nice about this is that it's not on a creature, so it dodges most of the accessible removal. The ramp of our deck is kind of all over the place for a landfall deck, as you'd normally only want to play cards that grab lands out of the deck or let you play extra lands. However, our commander isn't a normal landfall commander. We actively want lots of creatures and stuff to target said creatures. One of the cheapest ways to accomplish that is by playing a bunch of mana dorks and dorks that untap the dorks. So that's what we're doing with cards like Arbelf, which I know it sounds weird because it's going to untap a land, not a mana dork, but later in the game we have a way to turn all our creatures into forest, so this card will actually be pulling double duty in the late game. Elvish Mystic, Finhorn Elves, and Llanowar Elves are simply 1 mana dorks that we can play early. Alfedo Alchemist can either untap a mana dork while triggering our commander or untap a mana rock, or even itself. We'll be covering that at the end of the video. Curious Follower is a similar card, only we can target any permanent, although most of the time we'll be targeting creatures. Seeker of Skybreak continues the trend, only we are restricted to just the mana dorks. I will say it's fair to say these cards aren't exactly ramp and more support. I just want to say you're heard and valid, but it's my deck list. Next we have a more traditional ramp package that you'd see in a landfall deck. Farseek, which is currently the same price as Rampant Growth, and this card is slightly better since you can find Shocklands or Triomes, although since we're budget we're not taking advantage of that. I still want you to pick it up though instead, since it will be better and you'll get more miles out of it. Nature's Lore is in the deck for the same reason, although we are restricted to only forest lands. Cultivate, Harrow, and Kadamas Reach are all similar cards that search for basics with minor differences. We do have some mana rocks in Sol Ring, Arcane Signet, and SIMIC Signet. And to finish things off we have Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth, since we have mana dorks that untap lands. Let's talk about the support for this deck. These are either cards that support our landfall cards or enable our commander to trigger, which again, it's not our commander triggering, he gives the text to the card itself, but it's just easier to say commander trigger. Elvish Herder is a cheap way for us to target our creature, and Trample isn't totally worthless since we have all this small +1/+1 counter package in the deck. Is this card going to be broken? No, but it'll do the job. Coronian Ranger, I think I'm saying that right. Old viewers remember what I did to the pronunciation of this card in a previous video, but like that video, we're playing this card for the same combo potential with Ashaya to trigger our landfall infinitely. Trinket Mage is a tutor for the deck's most important card. That's going to be Shuko, which comes with a equip 0 so that we can target all our creatures for free, so this is an important combo piece for us to draw our deck. Unctus, Grand Melitech is another combo piece that can work instead of Shuko if we have the way to gain life on land CTB, although that's not really why we're playing the card, as it's actually a better combo piece that involves the Alfedo Alchemist, which we'll talk about at the end of the deck list. Ashaya Soul of the Wild will turn all our creatures into lands and enable the combo with the Coronian Ranger. Essence Flux, which might seem strange, but at instant speed this is a great way to protect and trigger our commander, and it resets the creature we blink if we need to get more out of it with our commander. March of Swirling Mist is a good way to save our board and get a bunch of triggers, and we can throw away useless cards to extend its reach. It's worth noting though that sometimes you can use this card offensively. Doppelgang is our Timmy inclusion for the deck, and boy can it be fun. With how much mana we make, it can be pretty easy for us to outvalue the whole table with this card. Just remember, we don't have to copy our own stuff if your opponents have nicer things. Neoform is more support for our combo, as most of the combos require creatures, so this is a great way to get them out. Sway of Illusion is a small cantrip that we can use for some crazy value, and if we have Unctus out, they're going to get even more cards out of the deal. I found that with as little as 3 creatures, that's including your commander on the board, we can be drawing at least 4 cards with this. Paradise Mantle is just a cheap artifact we can use to trigger our commander. If you're going to upgrade the list, I'd probably start here. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, because our commander is a bit of a boogeyman and people will want to kill it immediately, so these cards do 2 things. One, they give us a way to equip our creatures. That's going to be targeting for an ability that works with our commander's text, and then again, our commander, they're going to want to kill it, so always throw some boots on them. Now let's talk about the interaction category. These are cards that'll either stop players from messing with our combo or destroy their plans by removing important pieces. Sylvan Safekeeper will trigger our commander and give Shroud to a creature we need to protect. Active Resistance comes with a lot of options, either destroying an artifact or an enchantment, and it can even protect a creature, which, you guessed it, is giving us that sweet commander trigger. We can remove the burden of choice also by paying 4 mana for the card. Negate so we can interact with the stack, although depending on your own meta, you might want to change it to an Essence Scatter if there are a lot of creature combo decks. Snap is a cheap way for us to delay our opponent or target our own card if we need to save it from a Doomblade. The last section is about the value cards. These are cards that don't belong to one category or just generate good value. Eternal Witness is some decent recursion, with Evolution Witness being a repeatable source of recursion for our deck. However, we have to stick to a permanent card, so that's why we're still playing the Eternal Witness as well. Spark Double to copy an important creature or planeswalker we control. This card is a good way to create a backup to an important combo piece if you think it's going to be hit by removal when someone untaps. Ancient Green Warden is going to double all our landfall triggers, making cards like Spore Mound more likely to pull the combo off, since it'll make the extra body for more shots of hitting a land. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, which might seem like a strange inclusion, but unfortunately, Labman, Thassa's Oracle are just too expensive, and this is the cheapest alternative to cards like that. So we're playing Jace as it's our win con when our deck runs out of cards. Otherwise, that card doesn't really mesh well with our deck. Sylvan Awakening is another win con for our deck, and if we needed to, it's a way for us to make a bunch of creatures to inherit that text from our commander. Intruder Alarm is a funky way for us to get a lot of value out of the tokens we are making from lands, ETBing, making it easier for us to make lots of mana. This card can backfire depending on who you're playing against, so be careful. However, I did still put it in the deck because we are playing so many mana dorks that this card actually tends to generate you crazy amounts of value. Our final card is Primeval Bounty, since it does a little everything we like. We want creatures, we want to gain life when lands ETB, in case we have to use Unctus a lot, and we don't mind counters as it's a way to trigger our commander. For the mana base, feel free to copy the one found in the deck list in the description of this video. I went pretty hardcore and tried to save a lot of money on my version, so quick upgrades would be an inclusion of fetch lands. My recommended land for this deck is Reliquary Tower, as the commander will fill your hand up, and like a true SIMIC player, we don't want to get rid of any of the cards. For the combo section, we're going to talk about Unctus, Grand Melitech, and Alfeto Alchemist combo. For the combo, we'll need both cards and a Jace, Wielder of Mysteries on the battlefield. Alfeto Alchemist shouldn't have Summoning Sickness. To start this combo, we'll activate Alfeto Alchemist by tapping it, targeting itself. Then Alfeto Alchemist triggers, causing you to lose. Thanks to Unctus, we'll resolve the Alfeto Alchemist trigger, untapping it, and then we'll repeat the process until we've drawn our deck. Once we have, Jace will trigger and we'll win the game. That's going to be all from me today, and I hope you enjoyed the deck. Let me know how I did, or tell me about your favorite SIMIC commander in the comments below. Join me next time for another crazy video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.